So my name is Jason Hengels. I'm Vice President of Security at Box. And essentially that means that I'm responsible for all things security, physical security, data security, security-related compliance, all of that sort of thing. And so I joined Box at the tail end of July of this year. So really I've only been with Box for a few months, but they've been a pretty busy few months. And it's busy in a good way. Essentially, before I got to Box, we did have a security program. It was run by a gentleman by the name of Jeff Quaiser, who's our VP of Ops, and now it's been handed off to me. Prior to Box, I was at a company called Visa, and so I was at Visa, and my charter when I left Visa was actually, I essentially was the acting interim chief security officer of the companies that Visa was acquiring. Funny enough, I was at Visa because basically I was at a company that was acquired by Visa. And that company was CyberSource Corporation, which is a credit card payment gateway. And I was there directing their security efforts for just about 11 years. So my background's really in sort of the payment security industry. But I'm very used to being responsible for security for companies that may or may not have large targets on their backs. So my goal here today is to talk a little bit about basically kind of the internal kind of security in terms of, just key points of interest at Box, and then hand over to Andy, who can basically talk about features and security capabilities of the product offering itself.
Hi, I'm Andy Kiang, product manager for the enterprise. That includes any sort of features that involve the administration of accounts and just managing any account that you guys have purchased. One of the areas that I deal with is security, so I'll touch on a couple of points that you may or may not know about, and also give you a little bit of insight into our philosophy of how we handle security and what we plan on doing in the upcoming months.
Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and start at the beginning. And like I said, I'm going to talk about kind of our high-level capabilities and what we do internally. But when you upload a file to Box, we protect your files as they transit the public internet by use of sort of industry standard, strong SSL encryption. Not super interesting, but definitely important. What's probably a little bit more interesting is what we do once we receive files. So when we actually receive files and they're within Box's infrastructure, we encrypt them for long-term storage on our hardware. And we do that using the AES algorithm, which is sort of the de facto algorithm these days, and using 256-bit keys, which are the strongest keys typically applied in this sort of application. And that really buys us two things. One, it buys us good, robust, strong protection of your data as it resides in our systems. But the 256-bit keys also provide us a buffer into the future. So as computers become faster and keys become easier to crack, we have some buffer where we don't really have to worry too much about, succumbing to easily crackable keys. Box does have a 99.9% uptime SLA. That's probably pretty self-explanatory. The goal there is just to ensure that your data is available when you need it. We treat availability as one of the three components of security. And going hand in hand with that, we offer basically transparent maintenance. And so what that really means is we're not going to send you emails saying, hey, sorry, Box is going to be down for 4 hours while we upgrade our database. Our goal is to make sure that any maintenance we do is transparent to you, the customer. We get a lot of questions from either European companies or companies that have European branches or that sort of thing about Box's ability to comply with the various European data privacy standards. So the mechanism that we have as a company operating in the US to do that is something called Safe Harbor. And Safe Harbor is really we look at it as sort of a funnel. You sort of put all the European data privacy laws in one end, and as long as Safe Harbor is on the other end, and as long as we comply with Safe Harbor, we can pretty much assure that we comply with various EU privacy laws. So we work very, very closely with our counsel to ensure that we understand those privacy laws in the EU, their applicability to Box and what we do, and also understand what we need to do to ensure that we're compliant with Safe Harbor and thereby those laws. So the good news there is that currently we are Safe Harbor compliant entirely. We look at that a few times a year to make sure that, as Safe Harbor evolves, we also evolve our practices to ensure that we stay compliant. We also have a SAS 70 Type 2 report that's available upon request. For those who aren't familiar with SAS 70, it's basically a test, a third-party test of the operating efficacy of our controls over a period of time. So those key controls that are important to us, either operationally or in terms of security, are tested a few times a year by third-party auditors under the rules of SAS 70. And essentially, we get a report at the end of that that's good for a year. And that report just tells us whether or not we succeeded in adhering to our controls. And as an act of transparency, we make that report available unedited to our customers upon request. And that can be requested through our sales folks or through our customer support folks. I should note that as SAS 70 is on its way out, apparently it didn't have enough numbers and letters, so it's been superseded by SSAE 16, which is pretty similar. So as the industry makes the move to SSAE 16, so too will Box make that move. And I don't think it's materially going to change what we do, but we'll still offer artifacts. I should note also that we undergo quarterly penetration testing at both the network and application levels. And what this really means is that we pay trusted, very skilled third parties to basically try to break into our applications and into our systems at a network level and then give us a report about their findings if there are any. We also actually use a different provider every time. We have a pool of providers we use, so we get a different perspective. And this gives us sort of what I like to call the attacker's eye view of Box. This helps me evaluate our security posture on an ongoing basis. And this process was actually in place before I even got to Box. That's one of the things we do to assess our posture. There are a number of other things we do in terms of internal vulnerability scanning and all sorts of other sort of boring security stuff that I think is probably not appropriate for this forum. So what I'm going to do is hand off to Andy so he can talk about more interesting product security features.
So there are a number of security-related issues related to Box, and so one of the things that I'm going to focus on is controlling access to Box, mainly logging in. So right now, as you all know, people have all sorts of accounts, whether Google Apps or Salesforce or NetSuite, but also personal accounts as well. And people end up reusing a lot of their passwords. And we just want to make sure that you guys have the tools to ensure that people who are accessing your corporate content are doing it in a safe way. So you all probably know this, so I'll go through this really quickly, but we have a lot of different functions that are completely flexible in terms of setting password policies regarding complexity and how often that they need to be changed. And on top of that, we also allow you to monitor through reports and alerts, any password changes, failed logins, or a lot of, I forgot this password, I need to reset this. So what we've seen from more and more of our customers more recently is something that Aaron had talked about this morning at the keynote, which is single sign-on. And basically what that does is it allows you to have your user sign in with their existing Windows login credentials. And what that means is it's one fewer password that your users have to remember. And if it's one fewer password, it's more likely that they will make sure that that password is really secure, really complex, something that is not going to be easily remembered by anyone. So we allow you to integrate with your Active Directory server and use that same password. You could either do this with a direct connection with us, or you could use a number of outside identity providers. And there are some benefits to that, which I can go into if people are interested. But providers like Okta this morning, Ping, VMware, Simplified One Login, Citrix. Basically, we work with all the different vendors out there. And again, the benefits are for this 1Password for end users, you maintain control of your password. We actually never know what that user's password is. So what basically happens is that a user will enter in their name, their username in here, we'll detect, oh, we don't take care of the login, you guys are taking care of that, or having a third-party provider do that, and we'll then get a response back saying this person is legitimately who they say they are, and we'll log them in. It also allows for, especially with a third-party service, lower maintenance and provisioning and deprovisioning accounts. Whenever you have new users, new people join the company, they get added to your Active Directory server just because they need to be logged into things, and they can instantly be set up with a Box account if you choose. Also, conversely, when they leave, you don't have to worry about, oh God, let's make sure we go into Box and make them inactive. You could easily just, we get a notification from your server saying, this individual no longer works here, just deactivate their entire account, and we can do that instantly. And one more thing that I wanted to go into is trusted access. Aaron had mentioned it this morning, which is basically starting today, we have the feature where you can turn on tracking for every login that you make. We note the IP address, we make a best guess at geolocation based on that, and whenever you log in via a new device, we will actually send you an email and say, hey, just to let you know, someone logged into your account on this device. It's probably you, just ignore it. If it's not you though, here's a link. You click that link, we immediately deactivate that session and then prompt you to change your password so that you prevent further incursions. Also, with that, you can manage a list of your various logins, and pretty soon you'll be able to also immediately disconnect all of the existing sessions, whether that session is a web browser, a sync device, a mobile application, or even a third-party service. That should be coming out soon. And in addition to that, an admin will, because we're tracking all these devices, an admin will also have the ability to limit the number of devices that an employee can access Box on. So for instance, the default might be if you turn it on, an individual can only access, have one sync application running, one smartphone application, and one tablet application. And you could set each of those toggles to each of those types to a different number. Lastly, wanted to touch on monitoring activity on Box. So what we try to do with Box, our philosophy is generally to empower your users to collaborate more, to be more productive, and to be able to share without having to think, is this person inside the firewall or outside? Are they within our company, or is it a vendor? All these things we try to make transparent. The flip side of that is that we're placing a lot of trust in any individual user, and we want to make sure that the people controlling the accounts, the administrators, have the ability to actually get a good view on what it is that people are doing. So the idea is that we want to trust you, but we're going to have oversight over you, and we're going to watch you just to make sure you're doing the right thing. So right now, as you probably all know, we have usage log reports that provide an audit trail on these type of activities. Really, if we're going to be able to provide you the information that you really need, we want to really provide a lot more than that. And so, coming soon, we're working on adding a whole number of different additions in there, including one of the ones that is highly asked for is whenever you change a permission on someone or invite someone new into a folder, you want to know, who did that, when it was done, what access they have now, and so being able to provide this information as well, in the reports. We also want to provide more granularity on reports, so being able to say, okay, someone uploaded or downloaded a file, where did that occur? Did that occur via the web browser, or did they do that on sync? And now that we're tracking devices, which device did they do it on? Whether their iPhone or their iPad. So just being able to make sure that you have a very clear view of all the activity that is going on within your account. Yeah. Sorry. So the question is, sure, getting detailed information on shared links. So a couple of things regarding shared links. First of all, right now the way shared links work is that they're available to everybody. And so we provide the information in that report on who has previewed or downloaded a particular link, but we don't always know just because we don't necessarily ask for who that person is. So one of the things Aaron mentioned today is that we're changing it so that you can default the shared link to have it be either continue to be available to everyone because you want to just disseminate, marketing collateral or something, or a PR or press release, and you just want it to everybody, as many people who can see it, or just be able to have it only available to collaborators or people within a certain, your domain, your company. And once we do either one of those, we will have to require people to log in to do that because they need to be able to verify who they are. And so once that comes out, that additional information will be available too. Yeah, it's in the usage logs right now. So you can already get it, and yeah, we are considering providing APIs to all our reporting data so that you can feed them into your business intelligence tool. But the timeline for that is I can't give you a date now, but we are very interested in doing that. An accident. Sure. So the question is getting, for a particular file, getting the information on that. I think what you would have to do is essentially set the report to a long enough duration to cover the period that you're looking for. And you could also just select the previews and downloads to minimize what gets covered in that report, and that should get you what you need.
So if I saw you correctly, you said coming soon is the ability to track via audit trail at a really granular level what files, folders, users have been accessing.
Right.
And do you currently also limit access at that level? In terms of permissioning user access to files, folders at a real granular level, like for a virtual data room, for example?
So the question is, if I understand, we are providing the information soon about having all that information at a granular level. Will we be able to also limit certain types of activities by device or something like that? No, that's something that isn't currently on the roadmap. If you'd like to talk about it more, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Any further questions for either of us?
Everything's perfect otherwise, right?
Financial information like invoices and maybe like checks that you're accepting or things like that. What types of protections do you have in place to ensure that clients' financial information or sensitive financial information isn't like corrupted or leaking to other people that shouldn't see it?
So if I understand you correctly, if users of Box are uploading things like sensitive financial information, are we doing anything specifically around sensitive financial information to make sure that it's not exfiltrated in some way or something like that? The answer in short is no, in that our controls apply sort of across the board, so it's not specific to what type of information is uploaded to us.
So right now it probably isn't smart to keep any of that information on Box and try to keep it to more like a contract-based file share system.
Yeah, I mean, we've done, so I come from the payment industry. I have a very strong history with things like, PCI and that sort of thing. We've done internal sort of reviews about, basically gap analysis and trying to figure out, whether that's a road we want to go down. Depending on the type of information, we'll make recommendations about storing it or not storing it with us. So there are certain things like maybe HIPAA data where right now we're not necessarily ready to go down the road of actual compliance ourselves in terms of HIPAA. So we may want to have a discussion around whether or not it's right to store certain types of HIPAA or PHI data within Box. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis.
Any plans to incorporate any kind of DLP functionality
It is actually something we've been considering from a product standpoint. The question is whether we might incorporate some data loss prevention mechanisms, and it is absolutely something we've been thinking about. There aren't any solid plans that I know of right now to actually do it, but it's something that's being discussed openly right now internally.
One of the things about that is that we're trying to balance the needs of, whether or not we build something like that internally or partner with a leading vendor to do that if they provide functionality that is way beyond what we might do in the short term. And so we're actively talking to a number of DLP providers in figuring out how to work together.
Are there plans to provide any alerting, based on, say, policies, someone accessing more than 50 documents in the last 2 hours?
Sure. So the question is whether or not we have plans to do any alerting for, triggered when certain activities like someone downloads, 50 gigabytes worth of documents or, starts sharing with a number of people and so forth. Yeah, we've talked about that. That's something that's on our roadmap. Unfortunately, I'm not sure when exactly that might be coming out, but that is something that we have been looking at. One of the things about that is just trying to find that sweet spot of what it is that people really want to track, because we also, don't want to build in an incredibly complex system where you have to run macros or something like that to figure out, well, what are all the 50 different things that I might want to track? So trying to be focused about that.
So there seems to be kind of an inherent challenge if you share out a folder today and have non-confidential information in there. Let's say a year later somebody drops a confidential file in that folder and assumes that there's no external people looking at that folder. You have a real potential to expose data in a way that you've never been able to do before because all your data is stuck behind the firewall. Any thoughts around how to control that?
On how to control it, sure. Don't do that. But you raise an interesting problem. The truth is, we do have detective controls available. But the most effective thing is preventing it, right? So I do believe that routine review of what you're actually sharing is something that we should probably be recommending probably a little bit more forcefully. Yeah, here.
Right. So I think there are a couple of different things involved in that. In terms of people dropping in a folder, confidential document into a folder that has been shared externally, I think the shared link issue is an interesting one because that is something that we're addressing. We found watching users that people don't necessarily differentiate between a shared link being available to everyone and not just the collaborators. And so that's something that we're trying to address with this upcoming release. And so we're always trying to make, not just look at new features, but try to understand how people are actually using our features to try to tighten things up all the time. There are things you can potentially do to sort of, I can talk with you details about how to track back some of this stuff to make sure that after it happens as well. But I think some of it is really just, making sure that when people are doing things that, people are aware of when you put it in a folder, understanding what that folder is and who had access to it. In terms of copying and cutting a shared link, right now shared links are not instantly created for all files and folders. So they have to be activated. And that is one of actually the items that we are logging in the report soon too, to have that available, is when a shared link has been activated for a particular file or folder. So that should hopefully help with the process as well. Any number of those actions. Yes.
Not really his question, but have you thought about digital rights management, or are you looking into that
Digital rights management. Have you?
I think it's more of a product question.
Touche. In terms of digital rights management, that's also something that we're probably not going to do in the short term. If customers are interested in something like that, I think we would probably look to, at least in the short term, to partner with another vendor that might do that. But there's plenty more that we want to do to sort of make sure, problems like, the one you had brought up, sir, about, shared links and files inappropriately going somewhere, that we want to make sure that we want to tighten up and provide a better experience overall, that we're going to continue to focus on those areas for the time being.
I know in the short term, we implemented basically a training program that says anytime you send a link, you have to test the link yourself, and
Yeah.
don't offend anybody, but all of our sales team has to have a manager or IT administrator review any email they send out with a shared link. But that's not a real efficient way to do it.
No, and I think with the new feature coming out, you could actually set it as a default, like, look, you want all shared links to actually make sure they are at least a collaborator or internally, so that people don't even potentially have the option to have it be completely anonymous. And that might be sort of a less manual way of dealing with that.
This isn't necessarily on the roadmap, but would it help if you were to receive some sort of periodic kind of reminder, hey, this is what you're sharing? Do you think it would be in any way beneficial?
Okay.
Well, just a suggestion from that, you can actually set up an expiration on the shared link. So that's what I've set up within the company. So it auto expires every 2 months, and then I think the bidder colleague will get a message. You can set up how soon the notification. Set it up, a week before it expires. Like, is this going to expire? Do you want to extend it or not?
You can also have a dashboard where when they log in, it has a dashboard of what they're sharing, and then at that point in time, what they've shared in the past, and right above it, you can sit there and say, okay, this is what you worked on last, or something like that.
Yeah, that's definitely something. We want to provide actually more information to the end user about things like that, of shared links, who's been viewing your files, what activity has happened, and better ways to consume that information. So that's definitely something that we also want to push off some of that responsibility to the end user as well, because at the end of the day, they assuming that they want to do the right thing, they would have a better idea of what is going on, but at the same time providing administrative controls to say, okay, there are also things that you could do as an administrator with oversight too about what people are doing. So is the question that you would just make some things unshareable, or say?
Sure. So you drop a file in a folder and say, don't share this. Or you could share individual files in a folder without sharing the whole folder.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about, identifying certain files or folders as something that, like, the owner or admin could mark as, like, look, this stuff is just, locked down and not shareable. Yeah, in terms of the watermarking, we've talked about watermarking as well. I think that generally works better for just in the preview state than in the supporting, like, adding watermarks to these in their native file format and not allowing them to take it out is a challenge. So it would probably be limited to a preview state, but that's something that we've talked about as well. Okay. I will stick around. I'll also be over at the pick your brain bar if you have any other questions. So thank you for your time.